Right, 10 o'clock, time to get started. Appreciate everybody taking the time to hop on with us again. We got a pretty good lineup for you today, we think. Lots of us giving some presentations here for you. Don't want to take too much time here, but I want to tell you one of the things that you all have been asking for is more like real construction related topics and maybe even a little training to go along with that. And so we're going to kick that off today. Chris Wascom's actually going to talk to us about concrete paving. He's got a few slides to really do a little more deep dive than what we've been doing. And so we're going to go ahead and give him the floor. Chris, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. So like Les said, we're going to discuss some concrete paving issues. These are just some things that we've seen recently when we make field trips, and we've talked about this in the past. I guess the age of our inspection force is a lot younger than it used to be, and so some of our more experienced guys have retired and moved on, and that also translates over to the contracting community. We see a lot of newer faces, in some of the concrete paving crews, especially, some of the skilled workers and finishers that may not have a lot of experience with DOTD paving, maybe have done a lot of work in the private sector, but not necessarily DOTD. So just want to highlight a few things from our specs and go over some things to look for out in the field, and hopefully, if your inspectors are not participating in these Roundup meetings, which we highly encourage that they do, that project engineers, y'all please relay some of this information to your inspection staff. So the first thing here is it's about dowel baskets, and dowel baskets, load transfer devices as they're called in our spec, is it's very critical for jointed concrete pavement to perform properly. That the placement, proper location alignment is super critical. If we don't have those dowel bars, at the mid depth of the pavement thickness, so that's like the first thing to check for, then we're not going to get proper load transfer. The concrete around those bars might spall. So that's number one is, check, make sure you have the right dowel bars for the thickness of pavement that you're using, or dowel baskets. Then alignment, if those bars are tilted vertically or skewed, that joint might not function properly. It might lock up. That could lead to premature pavement failure, things like cracked panels, or even spalling around that joint. So those are just, pretty important things we need to be watching out for. The other thing is make sure they're staked properly. You see from this diagram here, we want to, this is especially critical if you're using a paver. We want to stake them in the direction, or to resist the force in the paving direction, because that paver is going to be pushing a lot of head of concrete and putting a lot of force on those baskets. So we want to make sure they don't shift. So get them properly staked. Also want to make sure that they are properly coated with a bond breaker. They come pre-coated from the manufacturer, but there's like a tactile coating that they put on those. But those baskets, a lot of times we know, are going to sit out in the elements for months, just stacked up on the side, waiting to be used. And the sun is going to degrade that coating, and then the rain, is going to wash off. So just depending on how long they've been out in the elements, sometimes they have to be recoated. So just make sure your inspectors are aware. They need to check for that. There's not a really good way to check that. It's essentially just grab it with your hand and make sure that coating is still present. One remedy for that is to just recoat them with a curing compound, just prior to paving. Enough time for that curing compound to dry, a day or so, prior to paving. We're actually having conversations with some of the manufacturers about doing some testing to see if we need to change that formulation, and we might actually switch from Tectal to just a straight curing compound from the manufacturer. So we're looking into ways to improve that. Any damage to the coating obviously needs to be repaired, but that also applies to the epoxy coating. That also needs to be repaired, you know, if it's minor damage. Another thing that we've seen, I talked about tilted bars. You can see from this top photo, there's a bar that's slipped out of place. Also, the photo kind of right in the center has a bar that slipped out of place. So, you know, realizing that our inspection staff is inexperienced maybe, and just we have fewer and fewer people. You know, these are critical things that sometimes go overlooked, that we just need to, you know, make one pass right before we pay or right before concrete shows up. And, you know, some of these things are, they're simple to fix. It's just, you know, if we do it timely, it's a lot easier than, hey, concrete's on the ground and everybody's, you know, rushing. Another thing that's come up is the, whether or not to cut the shipping wires. So, from some prodding from some of our contracting community, done a little more research into this, and you know, the 2013 quality assurance manual actually required that the shipping wires, sometimes called restraining wires or tie wires, be cut prior to paving. And from the photos here, you can kind of see this. Les, is there a pointer on here that I can use? How do I find a pointer?
I can get one if you want me to do it, but since I'm running,
yeah, that photo right in the middle there shows a tie wire that's kind of the one to the left. Down a little bit. Right, you see the tie wire that's kind of got a sag to it. Anyway, right in there, you can see where that tie wire, it kind of looks like it's been cut. Sometimes you'll see them completely removed, unless the photo to the right in the center there, that tie wire is still intact. So there's kind of been a debate about whether or not we should cut those tie wires. And like I said, the 2013 QA manual required them to be cut. The 2016 quality assurance manual, that language was changed to be optional. So we're maintaining that language that be optional. And some of our contractors are telling me that, hey, we got, you know, older inspectors and older project engineers maybe that are still requiring us to cut those. And, you know, looking into the research from federal highways, from some other state DOTDs and some, you know, the American Concrete Paving Association, Southwest Concrete Paving Association, the research indicates that it's better to leave those tie wires or shipping wires intact. And the reason is it makes those baskets a lot more stable and less likely to shift and move and become dislodged or misaligned, especially when the paver, you know, is pushing that head of concrete over them. So, you know, I used to be one of those guys that thought, you know, I was trained, hey, you need to cut them. And I always told my contractors that. But after looking at it, you know, my preference now is to leave them intact. Now we are not changing the language to say they have to remain intact, because we do have some contractors that feel like there's a reason to cut them. So the language is going to stay as it is in the current 2016 quality assurance manual, that it's the contractor's option. But like I said, my recommendation would be not to cut them, especially if the contractor doesn't want to cut them. If your contractor does cut them, then I recommend that you wait till the very last minute. Like, you know, once the concrete basically shows up on the job site, have somebody go ahead and cut them, you know, ahead of the operation, because, you know, that just gives less time for those baskets to get dislodged. All right, Les, you want to move on to the next slide? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about time finish. So as you can see, the photos here is a comparison of a properly timed pavement here on the top photo where you have random time spacing. And the photo on the bottom is more uniform spacing, which doesn't really follow our specifications. If you look in the section 601, the reference spec here, we give a lot of detail about the required spacing and depth and width of those tines. So those tines are critical, obviously, for in wet driving conditions to channel water off the driving surface, improve skid resistance and minimize hydroplaning. So those dimensions are established basically to maximize that conveyance of water off the surface. But the random spacing is also important because if you have a uniform spacing, you can have really loud road noise or tire noise. I mean, that uniform spacing is creates like a harmonic frequency to where that road noise just gets like a really loud whine. And doing the random spacing really helps to prevent that. So it is critical that random spacing be used. So when we're talking about the time rakes and we're having any pre-pour meetings or pre-construction conferences, I've been told that contractors have asked, "Hey, do I need a special time rake?" And they were told, "No, you don't." Well, actually, you do. You need one that meets this random spacing requirement. And there is an actual TR that explains how you're supposed to measure that. There's a little device that you can measure the depth and the width. That TR is being updated. It's kind of an older, it's from like 97, so the picture is a little hard to see, but we are currently updating those old TRs, so hopefully it'll be easier to see what needs to be done there. Actually, I wanted to say one more thing about that. So we actually have had projects where the tining was done improperly, and we had to go back and overlay it with asphalt, a brand new concrete pavement, because of the public complaint about road noise. So it seems like a trivial thing, but it can be critical, and it can lead to a lot of problems. Next slide, Les. All right, so from this one, I want to talk about curing membrane a little bit. So if you look here at the photograph, it's not the best photo, but you can kind of see where the curing membrane is not really consistently applied. It looks a little streaky, a little, some areas got good coverage, some areas didn't. And, I want to highlight the fact that curing is not the same as drying. The reason we put the curing membrane is we want to minimize evaporation, which helps to minimize shrinkage, and it maximizes hydration, right? So curing is the process of the concrete gaining strength through hydration. When we don't apply that curing membrane properly, we can lose the necessary water in the concrete to achieve proper hydration. I've had contractors recently. I've been out on projects, and they asked them, "Hey, why are you not spraying your curing?" And the answer was, "Well, the slump's a little high, the temperatures are a little cold, so we're trying to let the concrete set up so we can get the saws on it, the concrete saw on it to saw the joints sooner." And actually, that's kind of counterintuitive, because by allowing that water to evaporate, you actually kind of slow strength gain. So, our specification says that you need to spray the curing compound immediately after you do after the surface water, the bleed water evaporates, and you're able to do your tining surface finish. You then need to immediately come back and spray your curing compound. Then the spec also says that we need proper coverage, and it describes that coverage as a blank white sheet of paper. So that doesn't mean areas the size of a sheet of paper need to be. The whole surface needs to be pure white. And best way to explain it is like if you hired somebody to paint your house, would you accept that coverage that's in that photograph? Or it's a little streaky. There's some areas where what we would call holidays, and those areas are going to lose water a lot faster. So we want it to be a continuous coverage that's just pure white. And at the same, equally important is, especially when you do use a paver, is those unformed edges, because you're going to lose moisture through those edges as well, the sides. So in those cases, you need to coat the sides as well, and you also need to shield the tie bar so you don't get the curing compound on the tie bars. So these are just some things that we've seen recently that feel like we need to highlight and make sure all our folks know what to be looking for. Next slide, Les. Okay, so this slide is just thrown in here. So last time we talked about our asphalt pilot spec that's coming out. I think everybody's pretty much heard about that, and I think we listed a few projects that might use this spec. I'm not sure if we have a final list yet, but I know we were asking for projects to be recommended. But I know there's been a little bit of anxiety. I've talked to some district lab engineers and some folks, PE offices, and everybody's kind of a little bit, I guess I would say, on edge about this. And, this is a pilot spec, right? So we're all going to kind of go through this all together and learn from it and see what we need to change or what works, what doesn't work. But one thing I will say is if you get one of these projects, I think it's critical that we have a pre-paving conference separate from your pre-construction conference, similar to what we would do for like a pre-pour conference on a bridge deck. Because I think we're all, like I say, going to have to go through this together, and we're going to have to have a lot of discussion, I think, about this. So this is just a list of people that I recommend attends that conference. So your PE, the inspectors, lab engineers going to be involved, the district, the asphalt inspector, obviously the contractors, QC personnel. And then we want you to invite headquarters construction section and the materials lab, potentially myself or Amar and likely Patrick. I mean, whichever one of us can attend. We want to go through some of these changes to the spec and some of the expectations, and what we're hopefully we can learn together, and we can come out of this with a good spec that we can use moving forward. So that's about all I got, Les.
Appreciate that, Chris. And moving on from here, we're going to send it over to Brian.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Les. Good morning, everybody. Something else I'd like to mention too, Chris was just talking about, if you're using the maturity method, and we've talked about it on several previous webinars, but that's something that you can contact Chris at the Mat Lab or Patrick Eisenagel. If you have a job coming up and you're unclear about what to do or what you're supposed to do, reach out to those guys and they can come out and we can just set a meeting up and go through it before we get started. So anything like that. All right. This spec went out unbeknownst to construction. It was an update about the material section of the specification, but inadvertently the specification section sent out this redlined version where it appeared that 109.3 and 109.4 were completely redlined out, deleted, and the only thing left was the material section of that specification. Of course, that was not the intention. The intent was only to make an update to that one paragraph. And like I said, this was mistakenly sent out. So we had some calls. There's some confusion about that. Hopefully this clears that up. And we've talked to them as well. So they won't be sending anything like this out again. So if you ran across it, that's what it was about. Of course, anytime you see something like that, that's out of the ordinary, just reach out to us and we'll dig into it and find the answer. What we got next? All right. We have a couple slides beyond this too, with the graphs, Les.
Yeah, there's some data graph.
Okay. Okay. This is the first time I've seen these. So we've made some changes to some of our thresholds. One of them in the past, through the materials lab, we changed some of our admixtures, and with the advent of e-ticketing and all these software platforms that we're using, we're able to kind of put the numbers under higher scrutiny and really see what's going on. And from our meetings around the state, one of the issues keeping estimates from being processed was calculating these financial adjustments, whether they're fuel, asphalt, and I don't know that many of you have done steel yet, but so I had Patrick pull the numbers on them, and looks like we can widen those thresholds. And next slide. So these are the asphalt and gas and diesel prices over the last 10 years, and other than the COVID spike, it's relatively stable, and they stay relatively stable. So next slide. What we're proposing to industry, and we're going to meet, we have a specification meeting coming up with industry, and we're continuing to work with AGC and our other partners. But if you look at these asphalt at 1 year and asphalt at 2 years, these adjustments, we have our inspection staff and our office staff in the PE office spending an inordinate amount of time doing these calculations. And a lot of times it's for very little money. You're getting very little bang for your buck. So if you were to draw a bell curve over these and isolate them, you would see that the majority of these changes are generally small, but they're happening cumulatively in the -0.5, -5 to +5%. So we're looking at extending those thresholds out, because right now, if it's more than 5%, you make the adjustment. We're suggesting, based on the early data, around 10 to 15%. And what that'll do is it'll create a blanking band where we'll cut out a lot of those small adjustments. And after talking to industry, what they're concerned about is the large swings over long periods of time. So it will still capture anything greater than 15%. We'll put this out maybe as a construction memo, maybe as a pilot, and test it out. We're not exactly sure when we'll put it out or how soon, but we just wanted you to be aware of this. And if you have any feedback, to reach out to me about it. I'm sure everyone has an opinion on it, and I'd like to hear, get as much feedback as I can before we make a decision, like always. But the data is pretty telling, and I think we could save a lot of time and effort, and then even reduce those estimate times even further. So that's something you'll be seeing in the near future. Any questions, please reach out to me. Next slide.
You're done. We're going to move it over to Caitlin at this point.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Les. So there have been multiple questions and discussions across districts regarding float. Okay, there's my slide. So I just want to go over the special provision with CPM projects. So the provision states that all float is a shared commodity available to the project and can be used by either party to mitigate impacts. So in other words, if there's available float in a schedule, it can be consumed by either the department or the contractor. In other words, if we use your float, we can, and if you use your float, you can. So once the float is exhausted and a delay impacts a critical activity, that is when it becomes compensable. So for example, if an activity had 100 days, but it had 50 days of float in it, we're allowed to consume your 50 days of float. Now, if we push you past your 100-day duration, let's say an extra 20 days, then we would compensate you for that time period. And if anyone has any questions about that, we're more than welcome to discuss this in detail later on. Y'all know how to contact us, and we'll be happy to discuss it.
Thanks, Caitlin. I kind of skipped one of Brian's. I went a little too fast.
I thought I had one more.
Yeah, you caught me off guard there, Les. I thought I had another slide before I talk.
So Chris touched on this, but we've invited the engineer interns in the PE offices, the office managers, and whatever Tech 7s are called now, construction inspector supervisors. but also extend this out to all of the other, our contracting staff and the PMs and the other people. We want to make this information available, and we want it to, migrate through all of the PE offices all the way down to the inspector level. So we encourage you to take these, and Les breaks these webinars apart into small digestible parts where they don't have to watch the whole thing. They don't have to hear about, claims and change orders and all of the administrative end. They can go directly to the portion, that's germane to what they do every day. So we invite them to these meetings. We encourage that they attend. We know that's not always possible. So we ask that, you make sure and disseminate this to your staff. And this new setup, I think we're going to start using is where we pick a topic at the beginning, and that is going to be more project specific. If you have some recommendations of things you'd like to hear us talk about, today we picked concrete paving and some of the nuances of that. But if we could talk about pile driving, we could talk about all kinds of specific project things that you're seeing or things that need to be addressed, and that's from both sides: contracting community, our DOTD family, and everyone else. So make sure this information is getting out. Again, we'll go into details about that at the beginning of the webinar. Then we'll go into overall topics that affect everyone. And then at the end, we'll do a question and answer. And we're going to do our best to get through. We're at 10:27 right now. So we're going to do our best to get through this, not run over time, and then have time at the end to answer questions. So that's the new format. That's how we're going to be rolling. So let us know what you think. Next slides.
Thanks, Brian. Let me move to Matt Jones.
All right, good morning. So contractor submittals. This isn't really pile driving submittals, things like that. What we're talking about is the cost breakdown that the contractor is submitting. So just want to reiterate to project engineers, whether you're DOTD or consultants, that we can redline those contractor cost breakdowns. So if you see something in there that was done incorrectly, typically it's an equipment cost that they're using Blue Book, and maybe they use the hourly rate rather than the monthly rate divided by 176, or they didn't do the standby rate correctly. Rather than just kicking it back to the contractor or holding it for a week, then sending it back to the contractor. The contractor takes another week or two to correct it, send it back to you, and then three lines down, there's another issue with this. One way we can speed up that process is just to redline their submittal, so that if you do see there's a issue with the specific line item, hey, no, you can't add this, that's a small tool, something like that, where you just redline it. Again, you include that with the change order itself so the contractor can see what it is that you've done, and if they agree to it, great, we can move forward. If they need to reprice it, then yes, they can go back and do that. But we're trying to speed up that process rather than going back 4 or 5 different times. Like I say, if you see something specifically that's incorrect and not in line with the specifications, just redline that, mark it up, attach it to the change order, and move forward with processing the change order. All right. So this is the, I guess, good news for contractors, and then just information for our project engineers. We have recently changed the truck rate from $50 to $150. Contractors, as y'all know, have said that the $50 rate is not sufficient to cover their expenses. It's been that way since the 70s, but we just didn't have the backup information from contractors to modify that number. Luckily, recently, AGC submitted several different numbers from contractors. So appreciate AGC and the contractors that submitted their costs. We looked it over, settled on $150 a day for the truck rate. So hopefully that will make the contractors happier with that rate. I will say this is not retroactive. So as of Friday is when we were doing it. So if you already had a change order processed, we're not changing that back. We're not creating a change order to correct any truck rates. If the work was already completed and y'all just hadn't processed the change order. Again, that doesn't need to be retroactive. It still should be the $50 rate because that's when they did the work. But moving forward, if we haven't processed those change orders, make sure that I'm sure the contractors will make sure it's in there, but just be aware that that has been updated. And just want to say, promises made, promises kept, right? Also, again, we're trying to make things better for everybody. So, last month or 2 months ago, I don't remember what it was, we modified the change order threshold, and so now we're updating truck rates. Again, if there's other things that y'all see that are languishing that hadn't been modified in 20, 30 years, bring it up to us. We'll take a look and see if we need to modify that.
Thanks, Matt. So I want to mention real quick, you might see in the chat, Chris Wascom also had a link to a document. So we will be sending out the presentation to everybody, and you'll be able to click on that link and go to it. It's like 80 something pages of good information about about the dowel baskets. So just want to mention that. And now we're going to move it over to Dallas.
All right, I just got one slide this time. My slide is about the funding for change orders and funding in general related to projects. Project managers typically maybe the program manager puts a 3 to 5% contingency on a project based on the letting amount. That's not always the case, but I think that's the general intention. That isn't something y'all really need to be looking into. It's just for your information. In general, there should be some money accounted for to be added to the project should we have change orders, because we usually have change orders on projects. But this money is spent not only in paying the contractor, but also for CE&I and other consultant contracts that happen during phase 6. So it could be eaten up by other contracts, not the construction contract. That's all just information for y'all to have. Y'all do your change orders the same way that we've been telling y'all to. One thing that I think we're adding, and we're going to go into more detail in a slide or two, is that one piece of information we'd like for y'all to share with the project managers when you're verifying there's funding on the project is how much the approved amount has gone over the bid amount. That will have some relevance to this contingency that's added to the project and inform them if they need to really start doing stuff on their end to get money added to the project. And lastly, this last budget, we've said before, but some projects have special funds like LTIF, LPA money, or in some cases district money, and we may not be able to increase that. So this is something that should be understood prior to letting. That's something that you can ask your project manager during design while y'all are reviewing plans, or if y'all want to talk about it at the pre-con. That's maybe a little too late, but if y'all haven't talked about it before then, it would be a good thing to find out at the pre-con what kind of funding. Is this funding that can be increased during the life of the project, or is it locked down and we absolutely cannot increase money? Not asking y'all to know what budget or grant the money's coming from, just if it's got special restrictions on it. So that's something y'all should talk about prior to getting into construction, just so you're kind of aware of if changes need to happen on the project. Will we need to cut back on other parts of the project, or talk to PM and get funds added to the project? Maybe move that up to administration if it's important enough. So That's it. That's it for my slide.
Thanks, Dallas. Next up, we're going to move it over to Austin, who is in our headquarters area engineer group, and he is going to discuss the new RFCO template.
All right, yeah, we have have a new RFCO template. It's uploaded to the internet page. It's gonna be in the same spot as the previous one. Got it saved under the same name. Just made some changes to it, the spacing and everything. So there should be plenty of room for all the comments. And we also added in here the percentage. What we're asking is basically the percentage change to the total contract. And I have written under there the equation we're using here, which will be the approved change amount under the bid amount. There's two places you can get that information. Unless if you go to the next page, it'll show. We have the contract details, or you can go into to change order summary report. And if you go to either one of those, it'll list the total contract amount or the bid amount, as well as the approved change order amount. So it's, again, the equation is just going to be the approved change order amount divided by the total bid amount, and that'll give you a decimal point. Just multiply that by 100, and that'll be the percentage change that we're looking for to add to the RFCO. I think that's all I have.
Right. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
So I'm up next, and I wanted to share a couple of updates with you. One about HaulHub and our e-ticketing, and also I'll follow up with a HeadLight update. These are two of our biggest initiatives right now out of the e-construction group. We got some data from HaulHub earlier this year. They took a look at it, and marking tickets delivered last January was at 30%. And this January, we were already at 70%. So just want to thank everybody for kind of diving in with all your new projects that have the e-ticketing spec, and getting your inspectors to mark those tickets as delivered, or at least be interacting with those tickets, right? So just props to all of you for doing that. We really appreciate that. And I want you to also know HaulHub has set a pretty ambitious goal to get that number up over 90% by the end of this year. And so you'll likely see, if you have a project that's kind of been idle on the e-ticketing side, Sean Miller from HaulHub will be reaching out to you. I've been on a few emails already where he has reached out to some PEs like, hey, I came across this project. I see that it's getting tickets, but nobody is interacting with the tickets, and let's set up a training, and we'll get online and do a training with you or whatever to kind of walk you through the steps and help you get your teams in a position where they know what to do with those tickets. And so, if you get an email from Sean Miller, just know that that is a legit thing. That's HaulHub reaching out to you. They're being very proactive this year in getting help out to you and trying to get you interacting with the tickets out there. We also want to mention, along with this, update here, is that the contracts prior to the spec, we have almost all of the plants connected already. So you are able to get e-tickets even if it's a project that doesn't have the spec on it. And so we still want to recommend that you dive in on those projects as well and get e-ticketing. Even if you're getting a paper ticket and an e-ticket, I always say that's a good time to learn what you need to learn, right? And so you can kind of adjust your processes to deal with the e-tickets. I have gotten some feedback recently about e-ticketing. We actually were in the field. I brought a couple of our new people in e-construction out to a project, I believe last week or the week before, can't really remember, but and we got some good feedback from that. And feedback like this, something that I really never thought about, and this is one reason why we like to get stuff from you guys who are actually out in the field using this, is that with the e-tickets, it's a little more difficult to calculate yield as you're walking along with the paver, right? So you used to be able to do that if you weren't at the point of delivery to capture all of the paper tickets. They were still there on a clipboard for you. And so if they come out of order, you know which ones were there because you have the paper ticket. Well, that's not the case with an e-ticket, right? You get all the e-tickets when they're batched at the plant. And so when your truck drivers are stopping on the way to the project and get out of order, that kind of messes up the ticket order and what's actually been dumped. And so unless you have, if you're fortunate enough to have a couple inspectors and you have an inspector there that's dedicated to marking those tickets as delivered as they're dumped, no problem, right? Because then you know you have the right quantity in your app that you can calculate your yield from. But if you are not fortunate enough to have more than one inspector out there and your inspector doesn't have a chance to capture all that right at the point of delivery, then they could be out of order and you might not have the right totals to calculate your yield. A couple of things we've thought of here that might be helpful there. One is if you get to the end of a round, try to plan to calculate yield at the end of a round, right? You'll usually have a gap in trucks, hopefully not too much of a gap so that the paver's not stopping. But if you can plan that, it might be a time for your inspector to get up by the shuttle buggy, mark those tickets as delivered, calculate yield before the next load comes in. You could get the contractors. We may need your help on this. So your employee that's at the shuttle buggy might have to start marking which trucks have been dumped, and that way you'll have a good record of that that you could share with the inspector if that inspector is not able to be right there whenever they're being dumped. Just a couple of things there. We're looking for feedback. So if you have better ways to do it, please share that with us. So, one of the best things about this webinar format is that when we learn new things, it gets shared out to everybody. And as Brian was saying before, you disseminating the information you find here with down to your teams, all the way down to your inspectors, like that is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get information to everybody. Open lines of communication will 100% help our construction across the state. And so that's why we're trying to do that. Some more feedback about the PCC tickets. So your concrete tickets, we have gotten some reports that the water on the e-ticket didn't match the water on the paper ticket. Please be on the lookout for that. Share that data with us when you come across that. Like send us the ticket so we can see what the difference is. HaulHub has kind of been looking into it, and what we find is, at least so far, so those e-tickets are connected to the plant system, and so it's actually reading the batch water. So that should be the correct number. It is possible that the wrong number was being written on the paper ticket. But it's also possible that the connection might be connected to the wrong number in the e-ticket. So it could go either way there. We try to, make sure the e-tickets are correct, and HaulHub will dive into that. So if you guys have examples where you see something's not lining up or just doesn't look quite right, one of the best parts about the e-ticketing that I've seen, especially on the PCC side, is it gives you like percentages of if something is in spec or out of spec, right? So it'll tell you if you have too little water or too much water. When you see something jump off the charts that just doesn't look right there, try to send that over to us. We'll take a look at it and make sure that we can get those things connected and delivering the right information that you need. And then one more thing about HaulHub is stationing. We've had some trouble uploading the DGN files. It seems like most of our design files do not have that stationing alignment built into it. So we had some trouble there. I have been pretty successful of setting up some projects manually lately. So if it is just like a, one route that we can tie on a beginning station and put in some of the project information, I can get that done usually. And it seems to be pretty close to accurate, at least close enough to be marking your ticket stations on your ticket using the stationing feature that HaulHub has in there. So if you have a project you're doing e-ticketing on, you want me to set up stations, just send me the project number. I might get a couple pieces of information from you, and then I'll be able to set that up. And then moving on to the HeadLight update.
Hang on real quick.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go back to where we were on e-ticketing.
So just as a reminder on the e-ticketing, this spec went into effect, I believe it was February of last year. So any project let from February moving on, this has been a requirement. So contractors, suppliers, please be aware that if you are going to supply material to a project, this is required to be in place before you do that. We want to make sure the e-tickets are there for tracking purposes, for safety purposes. And so if you do not have, if you're not set up with a HaulHub, they can set you up very quickly. It's no cost as I understand it. And so make sure that your concrete plants, I think all the asphalt plants are set up at this point, but everybody needs to be set up to provide e-ticketing. Also, before we move on to the next thing, it looked like, David, you had a question specifically about this. The consultants also have access to HaulHub, so they should be utilizing this as well. I think most of their contracts state that they have to use DOTD software. Again, it's a requirement. So if when y'all are auditing and seeing that that isn't happening with consultants, just again have the construction coordinator ping them to make sure that they're putting down that tickets are delivered on those projects as well. But certainly from a year from 30% to 70%, that's an excellent increase. And of course, by the end of this year, we'd like to have it at 100%. But just be aware again, we're improving. So kudos to everybody that's out there. We've mentioned it a few times, and good job on y'all for taking the lead on that.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that.
They're in over 40 states, and they're bragging on us because I think we're one of the highest states percentage wise with e-ticketing and marking tickets. Keep it up.
I do want to mention real quick there, as far as CE&Is having access and possibly even contractors as well, but I know CE&Is for a fact is HaulHub ties into the HeadLight account. So if you have a HeadLight account, you have a HaulHub account. Some people don't know how to get logged in. I have a one pager that I can send out. So if you have not logged in to HaulHub yet and you have a HeadLight account, send me an email and I'll get you set up. I'll send you the one pager so you know how to get set up in there. And then moving on to the HeadLight update, prior to talking about the numbers here, I see that Railden has added something to the chat here about HeadLight diaries being approved in a timely manner. I just want to reiterate, so when a contractor gets access to HeadLight, they have a portal account, which is read-only. That read-only account only allows them to see reports and forms that are in an approved status. And so they cannot keep up with what is going on if you're waiting to the end of the month to approve all of your DWRs, right? So they can only see it when it's approved. So we ask, and this has been our recommendation for years now, is that within 3 days of a report being submitted, that you have it approved and in Site Manager. And then, of course, if you have a HeadLight only project, a hot project, all you need to do is the one approval and it's ready to go. You don't even have to sync it over. So please be reviewing your reports within a couple of days. And then, that way the contractors are able to keep up and see what is going on the project, what our documentation is. That'll also help with the estimates, I believe, because if there are some discrepancies in quantities or some observation that was made that they want to dispute or get corrected, because sometimes we make mistakes, right? That'll give an opportunity to do that instead of right before the estimate needs to be done. So please remember to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Les, I want to add one thing to that real quick.
Go ahead.
Yes, we do need to get those DWRs approved as soon as possible. But again, that's waiting for a DWR to be approved and then getting the quantities, I think puts us behind the 8 ball. I think you got to always start at the project level, and the project staff needs to be talking daily and, reconciling quantities between the project staff on a daily basis and not wait 2 weeks to talk about it once DWRs get approved or by the end of the month when the estimate's going out and we haven't talked about it yet. So those little small things like that, just talking about the quantities daily. And look, I understand you don't get them measured to the next day and then talk about them the next day. The lower level that we can reconcile these things, it's going to get us meeting our requirements at the, small things beget larger things. That's small steps is how we impact the large ticket, big ticket items. And that's how we meet our requirements and getting everyone paid on time. So great job on what we've been doing. Let's just keep improving. And if there's anything we can do, let us know.
Hey, Brian, Les, this is Matt up here at 05. I had an issue with that Friday with a contractor saying the same thing, that he couldn't see our diaries. His role was not correct. I was able to go in there and change his role, but a lot of that is they were not set up originally as site manager the right way. And when it carries over to HeadLight, they don't have the correct role, I don't believe, to see some of this stuff. Like his was completely blank. All he could see was the project number in HeadLight. He could see absolutely nothing, even though the job's been going on for 6+ months. But his role was not correct.
So
the role,
that's good feedback for Reldon as well to take back to them.
yeah, yes, it could be a role issue. I want to say it's not very intuitive in HeadLight what their role should be, because the role is actually listed as disabled. So you would think that that's disabling the account, but it's actually disabled means it's a portal account, which is read only, and that's what allows them to see the approved observations and reports. And so, yeah, it is possible they had their role was messed up, but usually the other roles give you project access to actually add observations. So I'm not sure what role could have been messed up there, but that has happened. And then also, the projects that the contractor is listed on in Site Manager, the contract authority they have in Site Manager does not transfer over to HeadLight. So it is possible that they had the correct user level, but did not have the project added in HeadLight. And that can be done at a PE level, or of course the e-construction team. I'll add somebody if you would like.
We added, it was about half a dozen employees, and every one of them had different roles. Yep. Some of them could see stuff, some of them, majority of them could not, but I don't know. Like I said, it may be some of that the roles and the way that it's all tied together right now with back and forth. But it may very well the PE office is doing the diaries every couple of days, but they can't see it because they don't have the right role, and they don't know they don't have the right role because they don't know what they have and what they don't have.
Yeah, that's good feedback, Matt. And also it's something we need to watch moving forward as we move into HeadLight only projects. So prior to HeadLight only, like doing their contract administration stuff, there were only 5 roles. Like they just did not have a very robust role, user level. And so moving into the contract administration system, it is very robust and is kind of, I don't even believe we know everything that it does yet. And so it's going to be harder to make sure everybody has what they need, especially at first. And so working with HeadLight to get those set up correctly is one of the things we're going to have to do. So if you have a hot project, you definitely are going to have some different setup there, and we'll need to, coordinate that with HeadLight as best we can. So be sending those to us whenever you run across those issues. We're getting close to time here, so I'm not going to talk about these numbers too much. I just want you to know, starting in January this year, we started moving everything to HeadLight only projects. So we're not connecting anything to Site Manager. Probably some apologies from us there because we did not do very good on messaging. I've had a lot of people contact me like, hey, what's going on? We thought we had a pilot going on. And we did. We had a pilot back in November, but we transitioned very fast from November to the beginning of the year and got HeadLight to where they could do a project with HeadLight only as far as contract administration with estimates and change orders. And so we've been mentioning for like 3 years that we were going to roll that out. And so we just rolled it out. We're not waiting on this anymore. We're just going to move forward with it. So apologies that if you got caught off guard there. I do want to say the training is not that difficult. So it's, like definitely not even a whole day of training. And usually after a field office does one estimate, they never call back, right? It's usually one and done and you understand what you're supposed to do. So, and it can be done the same day as an estimate's due. Like there's not much training that has to be done there. I do want to mention real quick, so far we've got about 36% of the PE offices. These are LADOTD only, not consultants, but the LADOTD offices have been trained. We are targeting the end of March to get everybody trained. So your HeadLight only projects will be ready to go. What we're calling a project cutover is a regular project that has been syncing to Site Manager, right? The regular projects we've been doing for years now. The target there is to get those cut over by May 31st. So we will bring all of your estimate data and change order data over to HeadLight by May 31st so that you'll be HeadLight only there. That's a big ask. So, I could see that getting pushed a little bit, but that's our goal and that's what we're trying to do. It's a lot of projects that we got to get moved over to HeadLight only. And then shortly after that, we're hoping that limbs will be rolling out as well. Limbs is built. There's a lot of configuration that has to be done to get it set up. In fact, I believe HeadLight's coming in at the end of this week, probably, I guess, today and tomorrow, Friday, to work with our groups on getting the limb stuff set up so that we can do a short pilot on that. Once we prove it out, make sure it's working on a few projects, we'll start rolling that out as well. So support for that, just remember HeadLight they are moving format, so it's not going to be like training one office at a time anymore. We're going to start doing some webinars, maybe 2 or 3 a week, that just has a training that you can join, see what you need to do change orders and estimates. And then they're still going to offer the concierge support where if you have an estimate due one day, you can book time with Terry and she will hop on a call with you, walk you through that estimate or walk you through a change order, right? So still some hands-on stuff there, but we are moving the basic training to a more wide format where we're catching more people so that we can get everybody trained up and ready to go. They are still trying to capture feedback as they're talking to you about estimates especially, but change orders as well. So please keep feeding that, giving them feedback on all of that stuff so that we can get all of that updated and make sure it's all smooth from here on out. And that's all I have with the update. And I think we're going to move into the Q&A session at this point. We did have, I have one quick thing. So we had this slide last month. We have a submittal form now, an online form you can fill out to submit topics. We did have one person submit a few questions last month, and so that's what we're going to move into now. So question number 1, will project engineers be reallocated to engineer 7 with pay adjustment of 7%? This decision of pay adjustment could affect the decision of some project engineers wanting to apply for one of the new positions.
All right. So I'm meeting with our HR and civil service today, this afternoon, about the phase 1 of our reorg, and that is converting our district area engineers over to these new ADA of maintenance, ADA of construction positions. Once we get that approval, we will move forward with hiring those positions immediately, and then we will move on to phase 2 approval, which is moving the project engineers to 7s with the pay, and moving our district lab engineers and I think the design engineer and a couple others. Those will follow in phase 2 of this reorganization. So we're meeting today, this afternoon, with civil service to get the other one approved and started as soon as possible. We'll be rolling into this second phase. We've already submitted all the SF3s and turned everything in, working closely with HR and Garver on this, and that is the intention. That is the feedback I've received from our executive staff, and that is the direction we're headed. Next question. This one, what will happen in the case of a new PE who doesn't yet qualify? In the unlikely case that would happen, I mean, that's a decision for Robeek and Todd, but I would say they would probably just detail that individual into that role until they, were eligible for that. Probably few and far between, but that would be my likely suggestion. Next question. What will the new ADA positions be required to house the district? I mean, that once we're going to work, headquarters construction and the DAs are going to work together, hiring those. Where they're housed, I think that's a decision that's going to be left up to the DA. It's probably wherever they're centralized over their locations, but definitely something that the DA can decide. Is that it? Nope. Minor quantity overruns. At what point is the project engineer required to contact the PM for funding? The example given is for a full depth asphalt patch is $5,000. Look, normally I would have said in the past that if it's $5,000, no big deal, but we've run into a lot of these projects where they have very specific funding and you cannot run over. And what happens if nobody's keeping track of it and you make several of these small adjustments, and that cumulative total overruns the 3 to 5% contingency. So just to be safe, just run it up the chain. You should be talking with your PM anyway. That should be a relationship that's established at the beginning of the project, so everyone understands the funding, everyone understands what the limits are. I mean, just think about your own checkbook, right? You wouldn't write checks out of your checkbook without reconciling it, without checking the bank and checking the balance to know if the money's there. We're called to be stewards of the funds that are entrusted to us, and this is just a good practice. So that's my recommendation. Any other questions we didn't get to? I would like to add, we were 1 minute over. There's a new project viewer out there that's in development, and we're fixing to turn it on to go live. It separates all projects into 3 categories: pre-construction, under construction, and LPA jobs. So you'll be able to filter and sort and just cut out exactly your projects and what you can see. It is very helpful. It is very user-friendly. And again, it's on those projects that are under construction, it's pulling that open to traffic date from the form that you guys are filling out. So please continue to fill those forms out as you update your estimate period. We're out of time for today. Any last questions before we go?
Yeah, Brian, I have one question for Les about HeadLight.
All right.
Les, one of my inspectors the other day was using HeadLight to approve, approving the tickets that he got. And I was out there with them. They asked me about, is there a way for them to search for the certification number for a truck in HeadLight? Because they couldn't find it, and neither could I.
This sounds like a HaulHub question, and I do not believe that there is a way to search for the certification in the e-ticketing app right now. You still have to do that through our intranet page.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. If we didn't get to your question, you can shoot us an email afterwards, and we'll try to answer the best we can. Thanks again, everybody, for spending the time with us so that we can increase our communication across the department. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.